So I am doing another book haul today. This is probably going to be a big one. But to my defense, I have been accumulating these books for several weeks since my last book haul, just kind of here and there from different places. Since I have so much space to fill out, this isn't even the half of it, so here we are. So I think I'm going to start with the books that I've got from Half Price Books. This is going to be fun because a lot of these I don't actually remember. Like some of these are from Amazon and they're still in the packaging. And since I ordered them so long ago, I don't fully remember everything I got. So this is going to be kind of like a surprise, but also it'll probably spark my memory. So starting with Normal, this one I had no idea what it was about. I saw it on the shelf of Half Price Books. I kept looking at it and being like, oh, I don't really need it. I don't really know what that is. But then I read the blurb and it seemed so interesting. And I was like, you know what? I keep thinking about this book. I'm just gonna go get it. So this one is a thriller, but the interesting thing about it is that it almost feels like it's an opposite thriller because it's about a person who's like a killer or something and he has someone trapped in a basement and then he leaves his basement or his house and goes out into the world and meets this girl at like a checkout. I think she's like a cashier or something. This is all stuff that I've gathered from the little synopsis. And he makes her want to be a better person, but then he gets caught. So it's almost like he was trying to redeem himself from being the killer. So I don't know, that just sounded really interesting to me. Like I said, it almost felt like a reverse thriller because you're starting with the killer and then going from there. Next, I have Sugar Daddy by Lisa Kleypas. This is kind of a funny name, I know. But I think it's about an actual like rich billionaire, hence the name probably, but not like Sugar Daddy in that sense. I did read one of Lisa Kleypas's historical romance books and I think I gave it like 3 stars, 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. It wasn't like my favorite of all time, but it did make me want to read more of her books. And this one is a contemporary romance and it takes place in Texas. And here's Lisa right on the back of here. Next I have The Gatekeeper. This is another thriller. When I read the synopsis of this one, it kind of reminded me of like The Equalizer, like the movie The Equalizer, or John Wick, Taken, Nobody, just other movies of that type of genre where they essentially were these trained killers at one point and like had a career of that, or just like, you know, very highly skilled individuals. And then for some reason they stop doing that. Maybe they go into retirement or they just like leave that life behind. And then something happens that forces them to have to go back to that line of work and kind of like show their skill set once again. I really love those kinds of movies. And this book, the synopsis made me feel like it was gonna be a book like that. So I definitely wanted to read that because I love that trope so much. Next I got We Met in December. This is a Christmas book. It's a Christmas contemporary romance book. I've said it before, contemporary romance is hit or miss for me. Like they tend to not be my favorite genre, especially more like modern contemporary romances, but I'm always willing to try them. And I like the idea of Christmas books, like themed books for the season. We'll try it, we'll see what happens. Then I got My Lady's Choosing. This one is so interesting and unique because it is an interactive romance novel, which I saw that and I was like, what? So if you've ever played games like Telltale games, like the Walking Dead game or The Wolf Among Us, they're types of video games where essentially you kind of choose the direction of where the story goes and the ending can change based on the choices you make during the game. And like you can change what somebody says, like choose what they're gonna say to somebody else and different things like that. And this book is literally a book like that. I don't know how many different outcomes can happen from this book, like how many different endings or different journeys you go on or even what. I didn't want to look too much into it. I don't know how it's gonna be. I have no idea, but just the thought of that is so fun. And I want to see if there's other books out there like this because maybe I do a whole video on interactive novels. I don't know. I never had heard of that before. So that was a really fun find at Half Price Books. Next up, we have books that I got from Barnes & Noble, starting off with Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. So I read Fable a while ago, Fable and Namesake, and I really love those books. Something about myself I've discovered is I love pirates. That's like one of my favorite genres, I guess. I don't know, things to read about, things to watch movies about. I love pirate stuff. On the back, it compares the main character to a lady, Jack Sparrow, which I love Jack Sparrow, so that sounds fun. These also have the sprayed edges because I think this was the Barnes & Noble exclusive, if I'm not mistaken, and I love sprayed edges too. Next, I have A Multitude of Dreams. This one I'm pretty sure is a fantasy, young adult fantasy. I want to say it's either an enemies to lovers or it's definitely just a romance. But basically in in this world, there had been a plague for the last 3 years, and this girl was boarded up in a castle. And now that the plague is finally over, some guy comes in because he needed to do something in the castle from what I read in the blurb, and they end up meeting. And there's a lot of secrecy and lies that's been abounded about this plague, and like through the 3 years there's been a plague. So together they're kind of trying to uncover everything that's happened. I thought that the idea of a fantasy book taking place around a plague was interesting. I never read anything like that before. Lastly, from Barnes & Noble, I have Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. I've been wanting to read more Christian nonfiction as well as fiction, and I really like C.S. Lewis. I used to read a lot of books from him in high school, and I think I read either excerpts of this one or the whole thing. I don't fully remember. So either way, I'm excited to reread this book and hopefully read some more of his books in the future. I also got a random book from Walmart at one point. This is A Dawn of Onyx. I read this book on Kindle and I really enjoyed it actually. I feel like this is a fantasy romance that goes under the radar. So this book is about a girl who ends up trading her life in a sense for her brother's, and then she's taken by this kingdom, which is allegedly like the worst kingdom in the world or whatever, in their world. And then she has to heal for them since she has healing powers. So next I have my Amazon stuff. So this is gonna be fun. We're gonna see, because I literally don't remember a lot of these. Yes! That was extra. Okay, the first book is literally like my favorite book of all time. The Bridge Kingdom by Miss Danielle Jemison. I freaking love this book, and I'm pretty sure I got the sequel as well somewhere. This book and The Traitor Queen are literally like my favorite books of all time. These are fantasy romance books, and they are literally the epitome of enemies to lovers. I've read some stuff that was enemies to lovers, quote unquote, that they didn't really feel like enemies, and they became lovers too quick. This is like, they're enemies, and they have a good reason to be enemies. I highly recommend these books. Lara is one of my all-time favorite book characters. So basically, she's a trained warrior princess, and this world is basically connected by this giant bridge, and there's one kingdom in particular that controls the bridge, and it's in their kingdom, hence the name the Bridge Kingdom. But this causes a lot of problems because of trade, different political aspects like that. So Lara in her kingdom is on a mission to go infiltrate the Bridge Kingdom, and the way she does it is super fun. I'm not gonna spoil. And then she meets the actual king of the Bridge Kingdom, and the whole fantasy romance enemies to lovers ensues. So much fun, really full of really good politics, romance, betrayal, like there's just so much in this. I can't recommend it enough. It's also really unique in the sense that it's a fantasy book and it takes place in a fantasy world, but there's actually no magic system, so nobody has any powers or anything, so it's kind of grounded in reality, but it's still in a fantasy setting. Even Sarah J. Maas herself says she was hooked from the first lines and couldn't put this book down. So I mean, if you like fantasy romance, enemies to lovers, please just read these books. Just read them. Speaking of Sarah J. Maas, I actually finally got the entire box set of A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I have already read all of these books. I love this series so much. One of my favorite series of all time. I really wanted to add the physical books to my collection because I did read all of these on Kindle. I have just been wanting them for a while, so I finally got them. And one day I'm gonna reread these and I'm going to love them all over again. And this can go up by my Throne of Glass, which I still haven't read yet, but I want to get to that eventually because I really like Sarah J. Maas as an author. Next I have The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This is a thriller. I saw a lot of other booktubers talking about this and recommending this one, and the premise alone kind of sold me on it. So if I'm remembering correctly, this one is about a woman who posts a negative review online about a book she reads, and then the author reads that review, gets upset, and I think tries to kill her. I don't really know. It's a thriller, so just know that going in. But that premise sounds so fun. I've never heard of a book like that. It seems very meta as well because it's about an author and a reviewer, and I really wanted to read it. Next up, A House of Salt and Sorrow. I actually just recently read this book. I really liked it, and I got the sequel, A House of Root and Ruin, and I wanted both of them together because it felt weird to have one and not the other one. I haven't read this one yet, but I really enjoyed the first one. This had a lot of creepy elements without being too over the top, but at the same time, it was actually pretty spooky, especially for a young adult book. It's a retelling of 12 Dancing Princesses, which I had never heard of before, so maybe going into it, I didn't really fully know what what to expect because of that, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It has a small subplot of romance to it, but I feel like this is much more of a gothic murder mystery, just mystery in general type book. And I loved trying to figure out what was going on, trying to figure out the plot twist, which I definitely did not see the plot twist coming. We have another one that I've already read. This is Belladonna, and I wanted to get this one because I also got the sequel, Foxglove, which I am looking forward to reading, but I wanted both of them together. I love these covers so much. I think they're so pretty. This is another one kind of similar to the House of Salt and Sorrow. So you're getting a lot of elements that you would find in like a gothic manor, murder mystery type book, and I actually really love the atmospheric nature of this one. I know this is kind of hit or miss for some people. Like some people think it might be slower, and I get that too. People either really like this book or kind of don't. I liked it a lot. I like the atmospheric nature of it. I loved trying to figure out what was going on. This book also has death as an actual personified character, which was really fun to read about. And I just remember the ending of the book was such a cliffhanger, like in a good way, and I could not wait to read the next one. And now I finally can. Okay, this is not the book I just opened, but look at this foxglove, the inside. I totally forgot that that was even a thing. How pretty. I really love when books just like are beautiful. I don't know, like when they put a lot of effort into making the book physically look so gorgeous. I feel like that goes into, you know, the whole idea of some people like to read books a lot, which I mean, I like to read books a lot too, but then some people also really like to collect books and get different versions of books. And I feel like I'm starting to slowly become that person, especially in terms of like sprayed edges and special editions and stuff. I never knew I would be that person because I used to be a Kindle reader for so long, but now that I have this bookshelf, it's like opened up a new side of me and I can't control it. Lastly, I have two books that are kind of gonna seem random, but there was also an explanation for this. I have Blood Meridian and No Longer Human. This one is by Junji Ito. So these are apparently very dark books. I got them because me and my husband like this YouTuber named Wendy Goon, and he said these are like the darkest books he's ever read. Maybe I'll potentially do a video where I like read like Wendy Goon. I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm also kind of excited. This one's actually a manga though. If you know of Junji Ito, he's a pretty famous horror mangaka. I think there might be a Netflix show that came out. I don't know if it's good or not, based on one of his works, but he is a very well-known mangaka. A lot of people think his books are masterpieces, and I've always wanted to kind of get into them. So this kind of gives me an excuse for that. And I'm pretty sure this one is a Western. And I think that it is dark, but not in the way you would necessarily think. It's dark because it's kind of more realistic. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right, y'all. Well, I'm super excited about all these books that I got. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.